And good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. We had a little swap meet at the local drag strip. It's at what's known as Springer, Oklahoma, just about 9-10 miles due north of Ardmore, and it was the very best swap meet they've ever had, and the weather could not have been more perfect. I mean, absolutely. Oh man, it was just a really, really wonderful time. I sold a few little things, bought a few little things. Uh, no home runs at all, which really aggravates me. But nonetheless, had a great time. Like I said, you could not have asked for more perfect weather. So I hope you had an absolutely fantastic weekend. Hope you were safe. Hope things went well. And want to get back into our study of the Olivet Discourse. Now, by the way, my name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And yeah, this is what I call my morning musings. Thought I better get that in. So anyway, last Thursday, I made connections for us. Okay. Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following was a prediction of the second coming of Christ of Romans chapter 11, 25 to 27. Romans 11, 25 to 27 anticipated the fulfillment of Isaiah 27 and Isaiah 59. Now, that is virtually universally admitted, with some exceptions. I've taken note of the fact that men such as Kim Riddlebarger, in his book, In Defense of Amillennialism, says that Paul was not anticipating the yet future to him salvation of Israel at the coming of the Lord. He was, in fact, referring back to the already accomplished incarnation. And so, now, how Kim Riddlebarger can say, okay, Paul was anticipating the salvation of Israel at the coming of the Lord out of Zion, but the Lord had already come out of Zion. Then why had Israel not already been saved? Riddlebarger never solves that conundrum that he has presented for himself. Now, I've got to tell you, in going over some of the comments here on YouTube that are being offered, it is absolutely stunning to me. I shouldn't be surprised by now at the argumentum ad desperatum of people who will say, think, and post almost anything in an attempt to escape the force of these connections. You know, a couple of different posters have said, well, Preston is just cherry picking. No, and then they turn right around and say, well, Preston claims that when a New Testament writer cited or quoted an Old Testament prophecy, that they were bringing that entire prophetic context over to the mind of their then present audience. For instance, when Paul quoted from Isaiah 27, he was bringing the entire prophetic context over there. And yet they claim that I am the one that is cherry picking. Well, cherry picking is just, cherry picking a given text and a given verse and trying to make it say something in a different context from what it was supposed to mean. And yet, just this morning, as I got back into the office from the weekend, I was reading where one of these individuals said that Paul only quoted partial verses or quoted verses from these prophetic contexts, only using the part that was applicable. Wait a minute. So in other words, Paul wasn't bringing the entire prophetic context over. He was cherry picking. So on the one hand, they accuse me of cherry picking, verse here, verse there. But they turned right around and accused the Apostle Paul, and by extension, the Holy Spirit, for crying out loud, of cherry picking by saying, well, he only quoted the verses that he felt were applicable. Which means he was taking those verses completely out of their context. Just think about that, folks. You want to talk about an argumentum ad desperatum? Once again, you accuse me of cherry picking, but cherry picking is picking an isolated text or two here, when I'm the one saying, by the way, in accord with the ancient Hebrew hermeneutic and with what scholars almost universally admit these days, it's the principle known as metalepsis. Scott McKnight, N.T. Wright, on and on. Richard Hayes was one of the very first that I have read that uses the term metalepsis. But metalepsis is that practice recognized in ancient Israel, okay? Practiced in ancient Israel. And it said, when a New Testament writer or a modern, from their perspective, writer or speaker quotes from an Old Testament passage, they are bringing the entire passage or context into the mind of their readers. And yet, I've got to emphasize this. These individuals, these objectors are saying, I'm the one that's cherry picking, when in reality, I'm the one saying we have to honor metalepsis. That's the Hebraic hermeneutic. That is the hermeneutic recognized by the world's leading scholars today. So I'm not the one quoting an individual text, isolated text, and taking out of its context. I am the one saying, okay, Paul in Romans chapter 11 was predicting the coming salvation of Israel at the coming of the Lord. That's Isaiah 27. That's Isaiah 59. These individuals are saying, oh, you're cherry picking. No, I'm saying that we have to examine the entire context of Isaiah, actually 24 through 28, to be honest about it. It's what's called the little apocalypse. I'm the one saying we have to honor the entire context. And they say, oh, no. Paul is only quoting from selective verses that he uses for his own application. Who is it that's cherry picking, ladies and gentlemen? Just think about that. They accuse me of doing the very thing that they are doing, when in reality, I'm the one denying the cherry picking aspect. The legs of the lame are uneven, to be sure. Now, so what I was doing last Thursday was demonstrating, okay, that Isaiah chapter 27, verse 1, predicted the destruction of Leviathan, quote, in that day. The in that day antecedent reference is chapter 26, 20 and following. That day is the coming of the Lord out of heaven to vindicate the martyrs. So, at the coming of the Lord out of heaven to vindicate the martyrs, Leviathan, i.e. Satan, would be destroyed. And I've showed you that is an end of the millennium prediction. Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following. The destruction of Satan takes place at the end of the millennium great white throne judgment. Well, wait a minute. What is the great white throne judgment? It's the judgment of Matthew 25, 31 and following. Now, I know some dispensationalists try to dichotomize between Matthew 25 and Revelation, but there's no justification for that. There's just simply nothing to support it. And I shared with you how this entire issue, okay, Isaiah 26 and 27, 25, 26, and 27, prediction of the resurrection. Matthew chapter 25, everyone admits, prediction of the resurrection, even though the word resurrection is not there, the word graves is not there, bodies is not there, etc. But everyone admits it's about the resurrection. And I closed last week by pointing out how the book of Revelation, in its discussion of the coming imminent judgment and destruction of Satan, said these things must shortly come to pass. And then I made the following application. Daniel, in his prediction of the resurrection, the end of the age, pardon me, the great tribulation, the abomination of desolation, Daniel was told, Daniel chapter 12, 9 and following, seal up the words of this vision for as many days to come. And you, Daniel, go your way until the time of the end. You will sleep with your fathers until the end of the days, and you will rise to your inheritance. So here's Daniel, prophecy of the resurrection, and it's a long time off. It's after he would die. Now, I pointed out that from Daniel, which I take the early dating, obviously, of the book of Daniel, from Daniel until Revelation, we're rounding it off 500 years. That's not precise by any means, but 500 years. Daniel was told it's for a long time away. I think anyone would agree 500 years is a long time in human calculations, and since 500 years is a long time in human calculation, it's not to God, but when he's talking to man about time, then he uses the meanings that man understands in regard to time. It's utterly fallacious to say God was speaking in some kind of a code. He doesn't talk like we do in time. So therefore, when he said it was a long time off, we don't really know what he meant. You know, very quick anecdote, and I'll run out of time, and I'll have to pick this up. Just this last week, I had somebody respond to one of my posts saying, Preston, you just simply do not understand. There is an apocalyptic formula that says, that teaches, oh, you know, God doesn't understand time. When God said things were near, they were very often hundreds, even thousands of years away. I have refuted that claim over and over and over again. There is not one syllable of support and proof for that claim. So this individual gave Deuteronomy 32 as an example, Deuteronomy 32, 35 and following. And as I pointed out, well, the problem with saying that is, number one, you're claiming that Moses was saying that judgment was at hand when he wrote, but since it's an apocalyptic formula, that means that even though it was hundreds and hundreds of years away, 1,000, 1,500 years away, see, it didn't mean anything. Apocalyptic formula. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I pointed out, Deuteronomy 31, 29 and following, Moses said that the song that he was about to give was for a long time off, after he died, when Israel would become utterly corrupt. Now, how could he say it's a long time off and then say it was at hand, coming quickly and shortly and soon also? That's nonsense. Secondly, Moses emphatically taught, Deuteronomy 32, verse 5 and following, that the song involved a time many generations to come. Well, if it's if it's many generations to come, then it's not near. And then twice in the chapter, verses 19 and following, verses 31 and following, he says, oh, that they, Israel, were wise, even, oh, that they would understand their last end. Hello, Moses was not living in their last end. Jesus came at the last days. Moses was not in it. So Moses was clearly talking about a time far off in the last days, long after Moses died. It is, you just have to excuse me, it's utterly ridiculous to say that although Moses said repeatedly, over and over and over again, he was speaking about a time far off, that now he says it was at hand and coming quickly. What kind of verbal communication is that? So I asked this individual, what did God mean if when God said something was near, at hand, coming soon? If by that he could mean hundreds or even thousands of years, what did God mean when he said, like in Daniel chapter 12, it is for a long time away? Do you realize what people are arguing? They're saying, well, when God said it's at hand, it could be hundreds or thousands of years. Oh, but when he said it was far off, that could be hundreds or thousands of years. So God had no clue. God had no ability to communicate the reality of imminence. Argumentum ad desperatum. Okay, out of time for today. Do not forget, on Wednesday of this week, the 12th, I will be debating Mark Smith, a former Christian turned atheist. The proposition will be preterism fails. Horrible, horrible proposition. Sorry, it is, but nonetheless, that's what we will be debating. I doubt that Mr. Smith actually wants to discuss the tenets of preterism. I suspect he wants to talk about everything except preterism, and then say, if this is true, this therefore proves that preterism is false, although never talking about preterism. Anyway, out of time. It will be on Myth Vision on YouTube, sponsored by Derek Lambert. You don't want to miss it. Be watching for it. That's coming up Wednesday. I'm out of time. I'll see you on the flip side.